My name is Karan Sidhu, and today we will be talking about the French Revolution. The French Revolution is usually seen as a bloody revolution and a messy revolution. In the end, it exchanged for an authoritarian regime for an authoritarian regime. Even though the revolution was a complete failure, it had far more impact than its sister revolution, the American Revolution. The project was done by Karan Sidhu and Gurtaj Alak. King Louis the XIV, or 16th, was in charge during the French Revolution. There were many problems for France. At the time, they had way too many tax collecting problems based off an imbalancement of power known as the Français Regent, which sucked for the average people because they had to pay taxes and they would have no extra money left over. For example, the nobles and clergy did not have to pay taxes, which also was a reason they stayed very rich. France sent money to help the American Revolution, and King Louis was spending well over half of France's national budget to help pay off some French debt. All his attempts failed because France declared national bankruptcy. On top of that, a hailstorm destroyed a year's worth of food, causing prices to shoot up for food, and people got angry because the French love to eat. King Louis XVI and Marie Antoine, his wife, were doing absolutely fine, living in Versailles Palace. You could tell by their well-managed physique and the way they moved. And the people, on the other hand, were hungry and angry due to taxes and food prices, which kept going up. The king called a meeting of the Super Parliament, which was made up of three estates: the nobles, the clergy, and the people. The nobles and clergy had about 300 each, and the people had 600. Everything was deadlock because the clergy and nobles teamed up and the people's estate got tired of it after a couple votes and left to make their own national assembly. The king was very angry about this. The National Assembly was not pleased with the king's actions at all. They did not like how he sent troops to fix the food problems in Paris, so they decided to seize the Bastille prison. Bastille was a political prison where political prisoners were held during the revolution. They seized it on July 14th, which is also nationally Bastille Day. They also freed all 7 of the prison's prisoners, which were held captive. On August 26th, the Assembly claimed and released a constitution that applied to everyone, including the king, like equal taxes and the same rights for all of men. Everyone had the rights to liberty, property, and security. Meanwhile, the king, Louis XVI, and his wife, Marie Antoinette, were still in Versailles Palace in power. In October of 1789, Marie Antoinette was rumored to be storing grain at the palace, so a bunch of armed peasant women stormed the palace demanding further grain. This scared the king and the queen, which caused them to move from Versailles to Paris. On August 26, the Assembly claimed and released a constitution that applied to everyone, including the king, like equal taxes and the same rights for all of men. Everyone had the rights to liberty, property, and security. Soon after King Louis betrayed the National Assembly, there was a trial for him. King Louis XVI, because of what he did and how he turned on the National Assembly to help Prussia and Austria in the war, they sentenced him to death by the guillotine by just a 1-vote difference, and his wife also got the same sentencing. The guillotine is Enlightenment thinking. Joseph Guillotine said it was a egalitarian death and it was humane. It did not matter if you were a king, peasant, clergy, noble, a National Assembly member, it killed all equally. This made a true statement for execution. Once the head was cut off by the guillotine, it was hung to show who was killed. The death of Louis XVI marked the terror of the Revolution. The complete uprising. The boring revolution had just turned exciting. They believed if you can kill the king, you could kill anyone. They guillotined 16,000 opposers of the revolution, including the king's wife Marie Antoinette. France was broken at the time. With the death of the king, there was so much terror that a lot of the people believed they would have still been happy if the king was alive, and they all chanted, "Rest in peace, Louis XVI." At the time of all this chaos, France was still at war with Prussia, Austria, and Britain. They won these wars due to an elite military commander known as Napoleon Bonaparte. The elite military commander who won all the wars for France at the time, Napoleon Bonaparte, was sworn in as the first consul connoisseur for France, or better known as the first dictator. Napoleon said, "The revolution has ended." When he said this, he meant the revolution was right back where it started. And under another constitution, Napoleon released a document called Napoleonic Code. Napoleonic Code is French civil code established under Napoleon in 1804. It was drafted by a commission of 4 eminent jurists, and it entered into force on March 21st, 1804. The code is clearly written and an accessible law, with a major step in replacing the previous feudal laws. Napoleon Bonaparte, when he became dictator of France, was basically an emperor. He was actually more of an absolute monarch than King Louis XVI and had an insane amount of power, but he ruled well due to Napoleonic code and a constitution. After Napoleon himself fell, there was only a 4-year period where a Bourbon or a Bonaparte did not rule, from 1876 to 1880. That was the only time a Bonaparte or Bourbon did not rule after Napoleon fell. The absolute monarch was reinstalled, but it was not reinstalled as just an absolute monarch, it was a constitutional absolute monarch, being the people had the say in who their absolute monarch was. Even clergy and nobles now believed that the power of a monarch/king did not come from God, and they shouldn't have it judged like that. So a constitution was developed, and that's how monarchs were now decided. There were constitutional monarchs instead of monarchs picked/chosen by God. Overall, the French Revolution was far more revolutionary than its counterpart/sister revolution, the American Revolution. The Americans believed to live under the way they kept living under the Star-Spangled Banner of the 13 colonies, but the French had radical instance of their universality ideals, which laws came from citizens being an example, which helped lead to democracy and republics today. The French Revolution was far more impactful than its counterpart, American Revolution. That is my summary and explanation of the French Revolution. I am your host, Karan Sidhu, and I will see you next week.